Welcome to Orioles on the Verge. This is Zach Spedden, joined as always by Bob Phil and Nick Stevens. And we have a big show tonight as we recap the trade deadline for the Orioles. The team sent a pretty clear message about their direction for the rest of the season. The Orioles came into deadline day 50-59 in last place in the American League East. And it's clear now that they are reloading for the future, trading several players at the deadline, most of whom are on expiring contracts, to really bring in a fresh group of prospects into this farm system and perhaps give themselves more to work with as they gear up for 2026 and beyond. And we will break down all of that tonight. But as we always like to do at the top of every episode, we have a new member of our Patreon community to welcome. And for that, I will turn it over to Bob.
Yes, thank you so much, Roz. I think this could be our very first British patron. Actually, I don't think that's true because I think there's an Alex that is also British, but I think he was born in America. This is a true born Brit, and I could be wrong, Alex. If I am, I apologize. I'm just going to keep throwing myself under the bus here. Roz, thank you so much for signing up. Signed up for the Discord first. Seemed very intelligent for a new baseball fan from a non-baseball playing country. So glad that you signed up. Hope you enjoy the content and look forward to hearing your thoughts as the days, months, weeks, years go on.
Absolutely. And this, as I mentioned at the beginning there, was a busy deadline for the Orioles. If you really look at the month of July, going back to the Brian Baker trade that was reached just before the All-Star break, the Orioles moving several key players. We've already broken down the Baker and Soto trades on this show. So tonight we're going to look at the deals that sent Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Laureano to San Diego, as well as Ramon Urias to Houston, Sir Anthony Dominguez to Toronto, Andrew Kitridge to the Cubs, Cedric Mullins to the Mets, and Charlie Morton to the Tigers. But let's start with the O'Hearn and Laureano trade with the Padres, because this was probably the biggest deal of the trade of the day, not just in terms of volume, but in terms of the prospects that the Orioles got back for the remainder of this year with O'Hearn, who will be a free agent after the 2025 season, and then Laureano, who has an affordable team option for 2026. The Orioles get in exchange a group of prospects that includes 6 draftees from the Padres 2024 class. Left-hander Boston Bateman is who national outlets have as a consensus big chip piece back in this deal, and he is indeed big. 6'7" left-hander has put up good numbers this year, and Loe Lake Elsner. He's joined in the deal by infielder Cobb Hightower, infielder Brandon Butterworth, right-hander Tyson Neighbors, as well as another right-hander in Tanner Smith, and first baseman / outfielder Victor Figueroa. And Nick, I want to start with you here because you not only mentioned the Padres as a logical trade partner for the Orioles, but you specifically name-checked Tyson Neighbors on a show a few weeks ago. So I want to get your thoughts on this deal first.
This was definitely a good one. This is definitely a big one. Yeah, I guess just let's start with Tyson Neighbors there, because that was on the listener submitted trade proposal idea show. Someone had Zach Eflin to the Padres for Net, who I think ended up going to the A's in the Mason Miller deal. And I said, why not? Let's get greedy because it's AJ Preller. You're dealing with AJ Preller at the deadline. Tack on Tyson Neighbors as well. This is the guy I really want. Got him. Look, he's my personal favorite part of this trade. He's not the best part of this trade, but he was a maniac at Kansas State. I wanted him very badly in last year's draft. Better late than ever, I guess. If I don't know if Teddy Sharkey's ever going to stay healthy, but he is the new Teddy Sharkey until Teddy Sharkey can stay healthy. Pure relief prospect, crazy, likely not very far away from the majors at all. 22 years old. He's already split his time between high A and double A in his first pro season. He's got a 38% strikeout rate right now, upper 90s fastball, slider, curveball. This 18.4% swinging strike rate. Like, this is an explosive delivery, high arm slot, like nearly 22 inches of induced vertical break. Of course, it's not going to remain that high when you get to the major league ball, but like that's a deadly weapon up at the top of the zone. Neighbors is not the crown jewel of this trade piece, but honestly, of everyone we're going to talk about tonight, I think this is probably the guy who gets to the major leagues first, potentially, or makes the biggest impact first, because he's a pretty high floor reliever here. But yeah, this was This is a good one. There's some other guys in this deal too that, of course, we'll highlight here that I think could be some real sleepers. But yeah, Neighbors is a big one.
I don't know what you guys are talking about. This trade, I thought this was not another rebuild. I thought we weren't tearing things down. You're getting rid of Ramon Laureano, who is clearly a part of this team in 20. God, fans are unhinged, as my little blurb says under my name. Yeah, love this trade. Thought for sure Ramon Laureano was going to get dealt simply because his value was almost too high not to, especially having a career year. And I know that they changed his stance or his approach a little bit to cut down on the swing and miss, which helped his stats be what they are this year. But gotta think that this is just a career year at 31 years old. I think he's never going to be more valuable than he was today. So you pair him up with somebody. I was talking about pairing him up with the Eflin or a reliever, I think last week or earlier this week, but O'Hearn works just as well. You get 6 players back, and yeah, Boston Bateman. I mean, this kid looks really, really good. Definitely the diamond of all the guys that we got at the deadline, I would say, if you don't count the Slater DeBrun with the Brian Baker pick, or pick 37 with the Brian Baker trade. Yeah, love this deal. Tyson Neighbors, electric arm. I think we might not have got like a ton of guys that are going to be high up on our top 50 list, which is coming out in a few days, but got a lot of fascinating electric arms. I think we improved the arm talent on the farm. Like, we already talked about how good the pitchers are in general in this organization over the last couple of years and how they've built that up. But just talking about velocity and fastball disgustingness, I think that went up quite a bit in the last couple of days. And Tyson Neighbors is one of the reasons why. Just great trade overall. And just speaking of like the relievers that they traded for, who, you know, maybe like the Morton trade, which we'll get to, guys like that. I think this was a much needed reset when it comes to the bullpen. Now you're going to have guys, you're going to be able to have a bunch of optionable slots in the bullpen and bring guys up, give them a shot. I think that's one of the things that, yeah, I think the Orioles bullpen was good the last couple of years, but it was so unflexible, just a bunch of guys with no options. So yeah, to kick things off, this was a fantastic trade. Let's get into all the individual players.
Yeah, I really like getting Neighbors back in this deal. And honestly, I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be at Norfolk for the rest of the season. He's pitched so well in Double-A in San Diego's system. Maybe it's a situation like with Cade Povich and Chase McDermott a few years ago, where they come over. Those two guys came over. They were in High A in their previous systems, the Twins and the Astros, and then had a start or two at Aberdeen before being promoted to Double-A. That's kind of what I see for Neighbors and a few other pitchers that we're going to talk about tonight. And Bateman, to me, there's not really a prospect in the Orioles system like this right now. 6'7" left-hander who can hit the mid-90s. A pitch mix that definitely needs to be rounded out, but when you consider that he's been putting up strong numbers this year in one of the most, if not the most notoriously hitter-friendly league in the minors, that's a real good sign of confidence, especially at just 19 years old. And I'm kind of intrigued, too, by Cobb Hightower. Reading up about him a little bit today, he definitely seems like a raw player. There's some question marks about where he's going to land defensively, but up the middle athlete's got an interesting power and speed combination, and picked up after a slow start at Low A to begin this year. The Padres went slot value last year in the third round to get him out of a commitment to UNC. And so far, it looked like after an injury and initial rough start at Low A that he was settling in and putting up strong numbers for them.
Yeah, the Bateman second-round draft pick last year. Like you mentioned, he's just 19 years old. I love the Baseball America says his nickname is Sasquatch, apparently. So there's that. And Eric Longenhagen's write-up describes him physically as built like the drawbridge of a medieval Transylvanian castle. I don't know what that means, but sounds great. Physically, the guy is a monster. But no, it's a couple of above average to plus potential offerings here. The curveball is the bread and butter. It's like a 3,000 RPM pitch. But this guy, he was committed to LSU. the slot value where he was picked last year was $1.76 million. Padres gave him $2.5 million. So this is the type of arm. Orioles don't draft pitchers high. They still get these guys. Here you go. Here's another one. So you just have this draft. You just nailed the draft. And then you get a second round pick last year who got $2.5 million. So added to this organization. You add him with Joseph Jurwa, who they just took out of Michigan State. A couple of fun big arms to dream on. In looking at Cobb Hightower a little bit more, Bateman's fun to dream on. He's the pitcher. He's the high-priced pitcher. I know we're all excited about pitching. But Cobb Hightower, I'm super stoked to watch this kid. He's just 20 years old. Like you said, third-round pick last year. The numbers aren't great. It's a league average bat right now in low A, but he has had the injuries this year. There's some bumps in the road there. Every report you read, it's a potential above-average hit tool here. Everyone loves the hit tool. A lot of the batter, weren't very many hitters they acquired today, but the scouting reports sound very similar to a lot of the guys they just drafted. Good hit tools, good speed, good defense, and some power potential in there. But they're coming in with a baseline of good hit tools, good contact skills, good bat to ball skills. You dream on that. I don't know. You look at a couple of other guys who are like us, but cover Padres podcast or Padres prospects, and they really like Cobb Hightower and his potential. It's just, unfortunately, the injuries have kind of prevented him and showcasing the stuff so far this year. So yeah, just when you look at the stat lines of these guys, like, they're not going to tell you the whole story. You see a lot of that on social media already. That people pull up MLB Pipeline's rankings, which are completely out of date and kind of meaningless right now. You're not the stat lines for a 20-year-old who's making his pro debut in low A. No, kid's got an 8% swinging strike rate right now, 15% walk rate, 16% strikeout rate. He's running a contact rate north of 80%. The underlying stuff looks pretty good for Hightower. I think this is a shortstop prospect of real intrigue now that the Orioles were able to swing in this deal.
Yeah, I'll start with Hightower because, I pretty much agree with everything you said there. You're able to get like a third-round high school talent here a year later who bat to ball. It's working out pretty well. Good strikeout rate, good walk rate, good swinging strike rate, 100 WRC plus. That's completely fine. Something to work with. Hasn't shown much power yet, but we know the Orioles are fairly good at maximizing contact and damage when they can. Also 7 for 7 with stolen bases. So pretty good athlete there. Yeah, really like to see what they could do with him over the next couple of years. And Bateman, look, why would you draft a pitcher in the first couple of rounds when you can let other teams draft them, make sure they're healthy, make sure you can get some pro data on them, and then you trade for them. So, that's pretty much just as good as drafting them, if not better, in my opinion. We've seen this time after time that Elias does this, and I think it's working. Other people will say, doesn't count. You didn't draft him. All the stats of the 2019 draft class, Cade Stroud and now, or eventually Houston Roth, going to be the only guys that came up since then. But yeah, Bateman, stud. I think I'm going to be, we got our top 50 update coming up. I'm going to be a little maybe conservative, cautious with these guys we just traded for, because I want to get a chance to really see them in action and under the tutelage of the Orioles. But I think Bateman has a chance to be a top 10 prospect in this system pretty quickly.
Yeah, completely agree. And, I have not filled out my personal top 50 just yet, but I know that Bateman is probably going to rank pretty high. I'm going to have Neighbors in there somewhere. I'll give Hightower a pretty good spot. And it really just, I think that you look at this trade as a whole, and you're not making these based on organizational needs, but it is good to see a couple of infielders coming back in Hightower and Butterworth, who will give you a little bit more depth in an area of the farm system we've identified has kind of lagged, especially at high A and double A this year. And then Figueroa, some interesting power there. Can play first base and outfield. Seems more like he's going to end up at first base long term, but someone to keep an eye on. Then Smith, another big pitcher listed at 6'8", who's had pretty good strikeout numbers this season in low A. So I think on the whole, this is a solid trade. I know you had to give up an all-star first baseman in O'Hearn to make it happen, but he's going to be a free agent at the end of the year. And with Laureano, I agree with you, Bob. His value was never going to be higher than it was now. Did the Orioles have to trade him? No, but I think that's why they were able to get back what they did. They had some leverage in this deal, and they put it to good use.
Exactly.
Yeah. Like, and as we go through these guys, like, there's no one who's going to be in our. How many of these guys we got today are going to be in our top 30? Maybe one or two. Like, that's probably about it. Not a ton. Like, we're not talking about, future, like, some could develop, of course. We hope these guys develop into more over the next couple of years if they stick in the organization. But I mean, look who the Orioles had to deal from the major league roster. I think they were still able to capitalize and get some really intriguing talent nonetheless. Bateman, Neighbors, Hightower, those are the cream of the crop there with this deal. But I mean, you look at the rest, I think to Brandon Butterworth, just great names in this deal as well. But 12th round pick last year out of NC State. This is I feel like a Braden Smith-esque pick who the Orioles just took this year from Oklahoma State. Good hit tool. Doesn't walk a lot, but he's not going to strike out a ton. There's some power in there. He's got 11 home runs already this year and 17 doubles, so he's packing up the extra base hits, but it's speed, defense, plays second short, plays both corner outfield spots. I've seen a couple people, again, who followed Padres prospects very closely and described him as like a guy who's never going to rank high on any list or probably appear anywhere on any list, no matter how deep it runs, but he's like a grinder. He's going to fill up the upper levels of your minor leagues, be good utility depth role, most likely. Someone you want to have in your organization. Again, a lot like we talked about when the Orioles picked Braden Smith this year. I kind of view Victor Figueroa, first baseman. Apparently the defense at first base isn't that good, but he's got a lot of power. I kind of envision, without looking too much into him yet, since, I mean, the deadline just happened 4 hours ago, and since then you've had to get 2 kids bath time and bedtime since then. So doing as much as we can is a little bit of time. We haven't been able to watch a lot of these guys in person yet, but Figueroa gives me vibes of like a TT Bowens with worse defense but maybe strikes out a little bit less kind of deal. And yeah, Tanner Smith, the last guy here, like, it's a flyer arm. This is he's a Harvard kid, so you can probably see why. Maybe Michael Ice watched him a little bit in college himself, but Harvard kid, 15th round draft pick, tall righty. Like you said, the stuff is there. It's just the results haven't been so good. They've actually been pretty good since he's been promoted to low A, but walks were an issue in college and when he was in the Arizona League. But he's got a 1.80 ERA in low A right now, 19 walks. Had Tommy John in 2023 and was hitting 98 in college with a big curveball. So physically and stuff-wise, there's a lot to like. We'll see. This is the flyer of the deal. You bring him into the organization. The clay is there. You see what he's got.
Yeah, I like Butterworth a lot just because I kept seeing raves about his defense, and then numbers look good offensively this year. He's 22 years old, soon to be 23 in high A. So, I mean, he's basically doing what the dream scenario of Griffo Farrell would have been. So if his defense is as good as Griffo Farrell's, but the offense is better, then there you go. Like we talked about before we came on live, we just traded out the 2024 draft with a whole new one here with all these trades. And yeah, I like Butterworth on my pancakes and on my baseball team. Figueroa, yeah, I think he's just big power guy. It's almost like Anutis Mordon was just released. Well, maybe this is a better version of someone like him, kind of just depth, and maybe you can improve his defense or his offense can get good enough that it doesn't matter as much. So kind of a flyer. And yeah, Tanner Smith, I don't know. I didn't get much out of it other than, yeah, probably a talented arm that they're going to mess around with and try to get something out of. But right now, just a flyer.
We'll go to a trade now that was actually reached on late Wednesday night. You've been following Orioles social media. Ramon Urias is much more loved after he was traded than he was when he was actually on the team. The Orioles shipped him out to Houston in exchange for right-handed pitcher Twine Palmer. Now, we had discussed the possibility of an Urias trade a few times leading up to the deadline. On one hand, as the guy the Orioles didn't have to move because they had another year of team control beyond this season, but it also felt like at the same time, with him not really being an integral part of the team's future, and again, having a pretty solid year, so the value was high, that if they could get a fair return, they would probably move him. And apparently they felt good about getting back Twine Palmer, a 20-year-old right-hander, soon to be 21-year-old right-hander, who was chosen in the 19th round of last year's draft out of Connors State College in Oklahoma. Palmer has been at low A Fayetteville this year. Good strikeout numbers in 42 and a third innings pitched, but he's also had some issues with the walks. And Nick, you had a pretty good write-up on Palmer over our Substack, OrielsOnTheVerge.substack.com this morning. And it seems like an interesting profile because he doesn't have premium velocity necessarily, but he's able to get a lot out of his 6'5" frame, gives him pretty good extension. So what have you learned about Palmer since this deal was announced?
I like one of my favorite tweets today was somebody like if you search on social media, and the same people who are like DFA Ramon Urias are the same people who are the loudest about being angry about this deal. Yeah, it is what it is at this point now. But Palmer's here in the organization. Other than a great name, like you say, he's 20 years old plus fastball potential. He's only 93 right now, but he's 6'4", 6'5". This is a big kid. I guarantee you, as long as he stays healthy, this time next year, if he's still in the organization, we're going to be talking about he's probably 93 to 95. It's plus IVB. It's a super hoppy fastball, as all these guys are. Big spin rate numbers as well. I just don't reference old top prospect lists. It doesn't matter where he was drafted. There's a lot of that comments too. This is a 19th round draft pick, yada, yada. Who cares where he was drafted? It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Trey Gibson was undrafted. Michael Frett was a 14th round draft pick. Nestor Ramon was 11th round draft pick. Nestor Ramon was not on a top 600 draft board going into the draft a couple of years ago. And now look at where these guys are ranked and the development that's occurred. Is Palmer going to follow that route? Who knows? We'll see. I hope he does, of course, but we'll see what happens over the next year or two. But if you look at that Houston Astros, this is what you got to pay attention to until we get to watch them live. Last year's Houston Astros draft class, Twine Palmer got the 8th highest signing bonus in that class as the 19th round draft pick. It got like $200-something thousand. Yeah, the Astros clearly liked what they saw in him and paid up for him. So yeah, that's where I think a guy like this at this stage, follow the money and look into the stuff. And it's check and check with Twine Palmer here. So, welcome to the org, and we'll see in the year what changes he makes. I'm sure this is a guy who you're going to see a revamped repertoire. You're going to see added 2 ticks at least to the fastball next year. He's going to be 21 years old, starting Aberdeen's rotation to start the year, maybe. We'll see what the kid's got. But I think this is an arm that I'm super intrigued by now that he's here.
Yeah, I really like this trade as well. I know this is a lot of people's least favorite trade that the Orioles made in the last couple of days, but Ramon Urias, look, fantastic role player on this team for the past several years, having a really solid year, but he's still a bench player on this team, and he's going to be a free agent after next season. He's going to make $4 or $5 million in arbitration coming up. That's kind of expensive for just a guy that's going to play 2 or 3 times a week if everything goes according to plan. And you have guys like Jeremiah Jackson, who is breaking out in a big way in the minors. Luis Vasquez, who I think is pretty solid. Better defense, could play shortstop. Emmanuel Rivera, I mean, not as good as Ramon Urias, but for dirt cheap. I mean, these are guys that you could fairly easily replace that role player, not middle infielder, second base, third base type of guy, right-handed bat. And as much as anything, I think they want to see if Jeremiah Jackson can keep up this 2-month-long heater into the majors. And these guys are going to be under team control for 5 or 6, 7 more years, depending on how things go. So it's not really that big of a loss, Urias. And hey, he gets to go play for a Houston team that's really going for it right now. Maybe like Trey Mancini, he can go try to earn a World Series victory to his resume. And Twine Roland Palmer, we should say, fantastic name, as Nick mentioned. And yeah, who cares? 19th round pick last year. I keep seeing people say that as like this is all you could get. don't act like you ever heard of this kid in your life before that came across is what we got from Ramon Urias. And I hadn't either. I'm not saying that I'm any better in that regard, but clearly the Orioles knew who he was and they scouted him. They targeted him in this deal. And to me, if they traded a Ramon Urias, who they did not have to move at this deadline for him, they really like this kid. He's a 6'5" mold of clay they get to work with. The more arms we have for this pitching development system to work with, the better. I think I saw a stat today that 1 out of every 3 minor league pitcher is going to go down with Tommy John. So yeah, give me the numbers, give me the talented kids with good arms, and maybe some will survive and cream will rise to the crop. And Twine Palmer, we ball.
The Orioles did subtract from their bullpen at this deadline. The Gregory Soto and Brian Baker trades, which we touched on in previous episodes, were part of that. But a big move they made in between games of a doubleheader against the Blue Jays on Wednesday sent Sir Anthony Dominguez to Toronto in exchange for right-hander Duran Watts-Brown. Brown was at Double-A New Hampshire, and an odd coincidence, New Hampshire was at Chesapeake, also playing an Orioles affiliate. So both players just had to walk from one end of the ballpark to the other to join their new teams. Now, the Soto trade, I think, had gotten everybody's hopes up for what the return for Dominguez was going to look like, and rightfully so, because the Mets gave up a lot to get Soto, and Dominguez statistically having a better season than Soto. The splitter was a really effective offering for him that he added this year. The Orioles do not get as much back in this deal in terms of volume. There's no question about that. But in Watts-Brown, they get a guy who's put up pretty solid numbers at Double-A this year. So, Bob, I'll start with you. This probably isn't the deal that a lot of people thought the Orioles were going to get for Dominguez, at least in terms of the number of players coming back. But I think when you step back and look at it and you see a potential major league starter, mid to back end most likely, for half a year reliever, it's pretty good, especially when said starter is in Double-A now.
Yeah, it's a very good trade. I mean, this is the facts of the matter. And we're going to talk about this with the next trade too. The closer a guy is to major league ready, like the lower that ceiling is going to be for a guy like Sir Anthony Dominguez. I'm sure we could have gotten a DSL or low A guy or two that had a higher ceiling than a Duran. God, there's a lot of names we have to learn. Watts-Brown. But this guy's in Double-A. He has a chance to be major league ready sometime in the second half of 2026. Yeah, it might be the ceiling of a 4 or 5 starter, but I mean, that's what you're going to get for a rental reliever. And yeah, I like it a lot. And I like how they kind of diversified what they went after. We got the DSL high ceiling guy. We got the Double-A guy that has a little bit lower of a ceiling, like Cameron Foster. We got that Mets trade for Soto, man, they really overpaid. Arsenio, I like a lot. That's a higher ceiling, but he's in low A. So that's just the trade-off you're going to make when a trade deadline deal. And yeah, I'm a fan of what I've seen so far in my diving into the guys we got. Had a couple more days with Duran Watts-Brown to try to figure out what we have on our hands here. Yeah, I'm a fan. He's going to be in my top 30 when we do our personal list coming up. I think he's worst case, he's a pretty solid relief prospect. He's got a nice slider, decent changeup. Fastball's about average. Maybe they can add the patented Orioles cutter or kick. They're always going to do the sweeper, kick change, cutter. They're going to mess around with things. And yeah, I like him. I think it's a good trade. Dominguez having a fantastic year, adding that splitter has added a whole new dimension to his game. But he was going to be gone in 2 months. So yeah, I'll take a guy that could be under control for 6 or 7 years and a potential starting pitcher. Yeah.
Another $1 million arm too. When the Blue Jays drafted him to 2023, they picked him up. So not a 2024 guy, although there is one more that we're going to talk about later on. But 2023 draft pick out of Oklahoma State. Blue Jays gave him $1 million, about $200,000 above slot value because he had a really good year in the Cape Cod League, transferred to Oklahoma State and just piled up the strikeouts. He was like a top 50 draft pick on a lot of boards going into that draft class. But The fastball, like the metrics are there. The fastball velo is already up. It's into the mid 90s. It's plus induced vertical break. It's just like the fastball is not getting a ton of whiff. I know Lance Barzowski put out all the data. It's really good. He's sitting 93.5 now, 19 inches of induced vertical break, nearly 7 feet of extension. Like a lot of this stuff, a lot of those fastball metrics, you're like, that's what the Orioles are coveting right here lately. Look at the draft. Look at who they're bringing in free agency, all this stuff. But he's just not getting the swing and miss with the fastball so far. And look, I'm not an expert at all in the pitch design and all this stuff. So I don't know how they're going to do it, but I imagine the Orioles targeting him. They see that, they see those numbers, and I imagine they have some tweaks in mind to get more swing and miss with the fastball. And he does have to throw more strikes. That's the other thing with him. It's improved. He's throwing more strikes this year. But it's still low. It's like 63% strike rate, 48% end zone rate. Yeah, both low numbers, but they are up from his first year as a pro. So he is improving. I'm excited to see him this year in Double A. I think he's going to start this weekend. So we'll see.
Sunday, I believe.
There you go. If you're close by to the Bay Sox game, you can see him in person. I will be tuned into that game for sure. This is one of the guys who is going to be in the top 30, I think, when we re-rank, because he's at the AA level already, having success. He could probably get a taste of AAA by the end of the year, but I imagine it's how much work do they want to do with him and his stuff first? Maybe they just go ahead and put all their touches on him now and let him just sit in Chesapeake for the rest of the year and work on that, get comfortable there. But next year, he's starting in Norfolk's rotation, right there on the cusp of the major leagues. Could be a guy late next year that gives you some starts if you need it. So again, another $1 million arm you're adding to this organization that probably could have went in the second round if he would have got more swing and miss with the fastball, and the walk rate would have not been as high as it was in college. You're talking about another potential late first round, second round draft pick that is now in the organization.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see what the Orioles do with these pitchers, because I know when we had Chase McDermott on the show previously, and I think Cade Povitz said something similar during his appearance, the Orioles don't necessarily have a lot of time after the deadline to work with these guys to really make the big picture adjustments that they know they need to make. But a lot of work is going to go into that in the offseason and into spring training next year. So, Watts Brown, I think if he gets a taste of Norfolk this year, it's probably late in the year, but I will be really fascinated to see going into camp next year what kind of adjustments he's made, because there's a lot to work with here, even if it does seem like the ceiling is limited, for him to get better. And right now I think that looking at him, I see him as a back-end starter, maybe a long man, but you can bump that ceiling a little bit higher with some of the adjustments that you both just touched on that he could make.
That brings up the other point too, that the people who need to hear this aren't listening. That's okay. Especially with the pitchers, right? They are going to make changes with these guys. They're going to put their own touches, their own spin on these players. And you've got 5-6 weeks of minor league baseball left, AAA a little bit longer. There's not a lot of time. And these guys, their lives have been completely uprooted. And so now they have to change organizations who are going to change their repertoire and the way they do things. They're changing where they live. A lot is changing with these guys. And they're not sitting here with, not that it's easy for major leaguers at all that are getting moved. It's not. But I mean, these guys aren't established major leaguers. These are guys in the minor leagues grinding away who have had their lives uprooted now. And they have like 5 weeks at most to settle in and try to fit into this new organization and find instant success. If they do, great. But I look at it a lot like the guys who the Orioles just drafted that we are hopefully going to start seeing in the next week or two. If they have early success, great. But if not, I don't really put any stock into those first few weeks numbers. Like, I'm going to wait till next year to really dive into that draft class. Same with all these guys. If they start out and they have a couple of bad outings, of course, these guys are under a microscope. People are going to be paying attention, and that's going to be pointed out of how bad they're doing if that happens. I don't take much stock into what happens between now and 4 weeks from now, 5 weeks from now when the season's over. Let's wait till next year till we fully start to assess these guys and where they stand now in the organization.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that.
And another deal the Orioles made involving reliever that was announced late Wednesday night, or first reported late Wednesday night / early Thursday morning. But for whatever reason, it took a long time for the full picture of this trade to come into view. When it happened, though, it seemed like a pretty good deal for the Orioles, sending reliever Andrew Kitridge to the Cubs for young infielder Wilfrey De La Cruz. Now, Kitridge was signed by the Orioles as a free agent this offseason after beginning the season on the IL with a knee injury. Pretty much delivered as advertised, being a steadying presence in the mid to late innings in the Orioles bullpen. Much like with Laureano, the Orioles had a pretty reasonable team option tacked onto Kittredge's deal. So in theory, they could have brought him back in 2026 and weren't desperate to move him, which made for kind of an interesting dynamic in this deal as they pick up De La Cruz, who the Cubs just signed in January as part of their international free agent class, giving him a $2.3 million bonus. Now, for context, that was the highest bonus given out by the Cubs to any player in their January free agent class this year, and was the 9th highest of any player signed overall. And for those who want to compare this to the Orioles' international free agent efforts, De La Cruz's bonus matches the franchise record that was set by Luis Almeida a few years ago. In his first season of pro ball spent in the DSL, De La Cruz put up pretty solid numbers, hitting .262 with 26 walks and 24 strikeouts in 113 plate appearances across 27 games. It goes without saying that this is a guy who's years and years away from contributing at the major league level. He'll probably be in the FCL next year, and if we see him at all in Delmarva in 2026, it probably won't be until, well, pretty much a full year from now. But there's undeniably some ceiling here in a switch hitter who's already showing a solid hit tool, good plate approach, has some power, and right now, a shortstop projected most likely by a lot of national reports to end up at third base, but that's more because of size than ability. The defensive reports that I read were pretty solid on De La Cruz. So this is an interesting trade and not necessarily one that I would have expected the Orioles to make with a player like Kitridge, but still brings back a pretty interesting guy for the system. So, Nick, what are your thoughts on this deal?
Yeah, I was not expecting to see the $2.3 million price tag attached to the guy when the trade was announced, and finding out who this kid is. Look, it's, Kitridge he's going to be 36 years old next year. You look at whatever metric, stuff plus, location plus, whatever it is, it's taken a fall from his time with the Rays. And given his age and his injury history, like, I don't see him rebounding. And you look at $9 million price tag, like, you can find his replacement for $9 million or even less than $9 million. So not too concerned there. Is the concern that the number of relievers that are now gone? Sure, that's a different topic. But Kitridge himself, to get a flyer like this, sure, I'm down. Like, and this is a move. You look at Baseball America, gives him 50 hit, 55 power, 50 field, 60 arm, 55 run, switch hitter plus power potential, listed at 6'2". I think Ben Badler noted, like, this kid could tackle on 30 pounds and become a big time power stick in the middle of your lineup if all goes right. Only 113 plate appearances this year in the DSL, but good walk, good strikeout numbers, like you mentioned. The 11 extra base hits and 113 plate appearances. Those are the couple of numbers, if you're looking at Dominican Summer League numbers, specifically small sample Dominican Summer League numbers, those numbers pop out as pretty positive. And you look at it, it's another multi-million-dollar shortstop added to the organization. Elvin Garcia and Emilio Sanchez signed for over $1 million in recent international signing classes here with the Orioles. You add another one to this system, and, like, believe it or not, trading the 36-year-old reliever for a 17-year-old Dominican Summer League prospect could actually help the Orioles next year, because they could move one of these guys. Luis Almeida is far more advanced than these three guys, I think, at this point, and he's showing well in Delmarva right now. But you've got now Elvin Garcia, Emilio Sanchez, you got Jose Pena, the 16-year-old who's performing very well in the DSL this year, and now you add De La Cruz into this mix.
Jamon Noel.
Yeah, you're added a lot of high price tag shortstops who are performing well, showcasing good stuff down in the DSL. You can use 1, 2, 3 of these guys to make some bigger moves this offseason. So I like this one as well.
Yeah, this one was very interesting because, we traded him last night, didn't get to see the return until this morning. My first reaction was when I saw the name, I looked up the prospect rankings for the Cubs and saw that he was from the most recent international signing period for $2.3 million, which would be the same as Luis Almeida signed, an Orioles record for most spent on an international player. My reaction was, and I saw his numbers, like more walks and strikeouts, 137 WRC plus in the DSL, so immediate success. I was like, holy crap, I can't believe we got a guy with this much upside for Andrew Kitridge, who, yeah, messed up knee to start the year. He's got a long injury history, 36 years old. Like, I don't think the Orioles were going to pick up the $9-10 million option for a middle reliever in Andrew Kitridge. And I'm not even sure if the Cubs are going to, but I guess they could use him for this year. I was shocked at how good of a return it was. And then I look and it's like, oh, you just traded a established veteran reliever for some kid in the DSL who is never going to amount to anything, blah, 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 blah. I'm like, well, we have different views on these things, the way of looking at these things. To me, this is like getting a Joshua Alonso a couple years ago, or yeah, I think Jose Pena is a little bit different skill set, but Elvin Garcia, but bigger bodied, maybe like a Steven Martinez type, like that's big upside. Yeah, there's a very good chance he'll never reach it, but give me the high upside lottery pick over the AAA, guaranteed to make the majors, but no more than a long reliever type of guy. I'll take the upside, especially if they're going to diversify, like I said earlier, and get guys from different buckets of ceiling and floor. So yeah, I love this trade. Absolutely loved it.
The deal the Orioles made on Thursday was a bit of a lightning rod. Cedric Mullins going to the Mets in exchange for 3 right-handed pitchers in Ramon Nunez, Anthony Nunez, and Chandler Marks. Now, Mullins, just to acknowledge what he did during his time here, the first and so far only Oriole to have a 30-30 season. Good presence for this team and made a slew of highlight reel catches that Orioles fans are going to remember for years to come. You look at the production this year, he got off to a hot start at the plate before really cooling off. And defensive metrics don't match what the eye test tells us with Mullins' defense in a lot of cases, because it's showing that he has taken a step back. And I know that that's hard for a lot of fans to believe. And honestly, I don't even know how much stock I put in those numbers, but it does tell us, they do tell us that he has taken a little bit of a step back. And in return, I don't think that the Orioles get a can't miss prospect in this trade by any means. It's really 3 kind of interesting lottery tickets, with Gomez being the one that has caught most people's attention. Has hit 105 with the fastball this year. The stuff on it grades out very well. However, he has clear-cut command issues. So let's start with, first of all, the fact the Orioles move on from Mullins, but then looking at Gomez, because if you took a dive into the data with these pitchers, Gomez, I'm sure, is the one that stood out, and he's undeniably intriguing, but he also has a pretty clear and glaring flaw in his game right now.
Yeah, big fan of this trade. Honestly, a lot of people didn't think that we'd be able to get anything for Mullins the way he had performed up until this final week. I think this last week, what a way to go out on top. I mean, making 3 tremendous catches, Robin, 2 home runs. I think he had, I don't even know, he was hitting bombs, doubles. He was lighting it up this week to really get that value back up. And thank you, Cedric. I completely understand, guys, people that are sad that Mullins is gone, but it's a business. He gets to go compete for a World Series, and we get to get a couple guys who could help the team out in the future. I mean, I love Mullins too. He loves Baltimore. Hey, when his playing career is over, bring him in as a coach, whatever you got to do, if that's what he wants to do. But yeah, Ramon Gomez, oh my God, just the stuff plus numbers. I think it was a TJ Stats that Nick posted on Twitter. The 4-seam it's averages 100.2. Like you said, touched 104.5. usually when it's a high velocity guy, the hoppiness, the IVB, the inverted break or whatever, is on the low side, a little more dead zone flat. Now 17 IVB, which is crazy for an averaging 100 mile per hour fastball, grades out to a 115 stuff plus, slider 122 stuff plus, averaging 90 miles per hour, sinker 108 stuff plus, curveball 109 stuff plus, cutter 103 stuff plus. I'm like, are they going to stretch this guy out into a starter? No, they're not going to, just because, like you said, the command issues. And I think they'll just let it rip, because I think he's got to be added to the Rule 5 or the 40 man to be protected from the Rule 5 this offseason if they want to do that. But talking about an electric arm, this is what I'm saying when I was talking earlier. Guys like Twine, Palmer, and Ramon Gomez, like, oh my God, and Arcena, these guys are just absurd, like just the nastiest pitchers. I think I also saw that the Orioles, between Arcena and now Gomez, got the two fastest pitches thrown, or the two pitchers with the biggest velocity in the Florida State League. Brought him to Baltimore. Yeah, love it. I mean, we'll see what they could do with him, rein it in, but I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah. Two of these three guys that got back for Cedric Mullins are actually going to are Rule 5 eligible this offseason. So something to pay attention to there. We'll talk about the other two guys as well. But first with Mullins, like I'm pretty cold-hearted when it comes to this stuff, to be honest. But even I know tomorrow, once my head's done spinning and all the craziness that was today, when I turn on an Orioles game tomorrow and I watch it, like, and Mullins isn't there, like, it's going to feel weird, right? Like, he's going to be an Oriole for life. We know that. We all know that. Potential future Orioles Hall of Famer. And I've never heard anybody say a bad thing about Cedric Mullins. So wish him all the best. Of course, wish we could watch him win a World Series here in Baltimore and not have to watch him go win one in New York. But, of course, wish him all the best. But with the guys that are here now, Gomez, he only signed for $10,000 in 2022. He has already had Tommy John surgery in 2023. So he missed all of 2024. So this is his first full year back, and he's like, I'm going to throw 104.5 miles per hour. No big deal. I think the arm's good after surgery. I don't know what they did to that arm, but yeah, it's a matter of being able to find the strike zone. But when he is in the zone, like, it is almost virtually unhittable. Like, this is the 100+ mile per hour with the 17+ inches of induced vertical break is one thing, but then you also have 7 feet of extension on top of that. That fastball is going to come at you so fast. I don't know how even major league hitters are going to pick it up. And actually, the big thing with the Gomez, why I'm like, at first you're like, he's not going to be able to throw strikes. I don't know about this one. Is this just a flyer that they're tacking on at the end of the deal? Maybe a Nunez or Marsh is the guy the Orioles were really targeting in this deal. But Baseball America reshared this article today. JJ Cooper wrote it back in April, I think it was, when he threw that 104.5 mile per hour pitch. I don't know if you guys saw this article or if anybody else has seen this, but JJ Cooper wrote, since 2021, there have been 30 pitchers to hit 102 miles per hour or faster in the minor leagues. Of those 30 pitchers, 21 of them reached the major leagues. Of the 9 who haven't reached the major leagues yet, 5 of them are on top 30 lists, and only 1 of them is out of baseball. And that list includes guys like Felix Bautista, Paul Skeens, Johan Duran, Mason Miller, Hunter Green, and some others. But he said in that piece, quote, there's no cutoff to ignore flamethrowers who walk everyone, Gomez. Even the straightest 102 mile per hour pitch makes the list. Pitchers who throw this hard get chance after chance after chance to figure it out. And eventually, most who are in the major leagues do figure it out. Some become stars. Some have only brief success, but they're going to keep getting that chance because velo means one thing above all else. They're going to get to the major leagues. And when you throw that hard with that extension and all that data on that fastball, like, teams are going to keep giving you an opportunity to throw strikes, even at just the slightest bit clip necessary to have sustained success. So I'm very intrigued. But yeah, he is Rule 5 eligible, so expect to see him on the 40-man roster in the next couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, the Padres traded for Mason Miller. Apparently, so do we. So let's go. Man, could you imagine if Felix Bautista didn't get hurt? I think fans might even be more upset today. But we would have had a pretty nice return on that deal if it would have happened.
What I kind of see with Gomez right now is that if the command doesn't improve itself, he could still have a shot at getting to the big leagues as one of those guys who is an up and down pitcher that probably moves around a lot in his career, especially while he's still optionable, because there's always going to be a team out there that thinks, okay, we can fix the command. And if we can't, we've got a guy that throws 102 to 105. And we'll, just hope that he has more good days than bad over a small sample size before we option him to AAA and get someone else for the job. But there's undeniable upside here if the Orioles can figure the command out. The Rule 5 situation, I will say, is not ideal because we're talking about a pitcher who has not pitched above high A yet. Nick, as you just mentioned, this is his first full season of pro ball. And the Orioles already have a tight Rule 5 squeeze as it is. And that brings me to the player that I think I actually like the most in this deal, and that's Anthony Nunez. Nunez has a really interesting background. Eric Longenhagen noted this in his report over at Fangraphs, where he ranked Nunez 18th in the Mets farm system. Nunez was actually drafted by the Padres out of high school as a shortstop in 2019. He was released 2 years later, but a loophole and NCAA rule exemptions allowed him to go play college baseball so long as it was not at a Division I school. He attends Division II, University of Tampa, moves to the mound, and then ends up with the Mets after signing there last summer. Repertoire right now is fastball, slider, changeup, cutter. Not a ton of velocity on the fastball, but he does a good job locating it. There could be room perhaps to add a little bit more velo, especially as the Orioles bring him into their system. The slider grades out as a really good offering, as does the cutter. And the changeup, not his best pitch, but as I've said before, I think the Orioles can work with a guy with a fringy changeup and get something out of him. Nunez has pitched at high A and double A this year. His numbers at double A had been pretty good. He's also Rule 5 eligible after this season. And given that he is 24, could get AAA by the end of this year, I have to think he's going to be in that conversation come fall.
Yeah, this one, looking at his baseball reference page afterwards, you're like, there's this gap. And I was like, what, did he go to indie ball? Like get cut, try indie ball. Now he's back with them. That's what's going on. And I saw that story about, no, he went to college after playing a couple of years in the Padres organization. It was pretty awesome to see that he has reinvented himself as a pitcher and is already in AA in his first pro season. But yeah, in that furthermore to that Fangraphs report there, Eric Longenhagen calls him a future plus command of a monster slider, might be able to pitch in high leverage situation, thanks mostly to that. And that he's been utterly dominant all year and is a virtual lock to be put on a 40-man roster this offseason. So clearly, many in the industry think very highly of Nunez. They say, yeah, he's 24, but this going back to that part of with the pitching prospect specifically, age doesn't really matter that much. There's very, very, very low mileage on that arm. This is a fresh pitcher who he only started pitching his final year at college. He went to Tampa. So 2024 is when he started pitching. He's only been doing it for a year or so. The 40-man roster situation, Cedric Mullins bringing two guys back on the 40-man that are Rule 5 eligible this offseason, I think does speak to the value that Mullins was going to bring back in a trade. But you see that good command, you see a potential plus slider, you see two other really good offerings at least. Could be something here. A guy who can contribute out of the bullpen in the major leagues potentially next year if all goes right.
Yeah, even cooler is the fact that Nunez was travel ball teammates with Kobe Mayo and Enrique Bradfield Jr. So just come on home, join your buddies, your old buddies in the Orioles organization. Yeah, really cool story. And yeah, it seems like he's definitely going to be added to the 40-man. I don't think you trade for him. And honestly, Gomez too. I just don't think the Orioles would have targeted these guys if they weren't going to put them on the 40-man roster this offseason. And another, I guess, silver lining of the way the season went is that you're going to have probably plenty of room to put them on there. So, yeah, I like it. If that slider is as good as, I mean, it must be because his opponent's batting average in high A this year was .064. In double A, it was 141. 40% strikeout percentage between the two levels combined, 11% walk rate. So of course he's only been pitching for a year or so. Of course the walks are going to have to come down, but you got to think he's going to get better too. I mean, it's almost like the Juan Nunez case where you're an athlete and you're new to pitching, that he should be healthy for a while. That's one good thing, knock on wood. But yeah, it's a very interesting arm. We'll see what he can do and get him up here to the MedStar Health building up in Bel Air and cook him in the lab. And let's see what happens in 2026.
Just up against the deadline on Thursday, the Orioles sent Charlie Morton to the Tigers in exchange for left-hander Micah Ashman. Now, if we had said 2 months ago at the deadline the Orioles were going to trade Charlie Morton, you would have responded, is Charlie Morton's ERA still in the double digits, and what are the Tigers thinking? Morton, to his credit, really turned things around after May especially, and got to the point where he at least was a reliable starter who could take the ball every 5 days and give the Orioles a length in his starts. They weren't always dominant, but he could give them length. And now they're able to move him to a contender and get a pitcher back who probably does not have the ceiling of a lot of guys that we talked about. I honestly don't even know if he will be on our top 50 when we update it here next week, but pretty interesting profile here in Ashman, an 11th round pick out of Utah in last year's draft. He's put up very strong numbers this year across 2 levels of the minor leagues, including high A and double A, 1.49 ERA, 1.80 FIP, and a mere 5.6% walk rate in 39 1/3 innings pitched. This does look like strictly a relief arm, but one who has good command, can induce a good number of ground balls. Now you can slot him into Chesapeake's bullpen, and because he was just drafted last year, he doesn't add anything to your Rule 5 roster crunch. So at worst, the Orioles get back solid upper-level relief depth for a pitcher who might not even be in the big leagues next year if he decides to retire at the end of the year, and who 2 months ago didn't even look like he was going to make it through the whole season.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Charlie Morton gave it another go next year after the way the season started. I mean, hats off to him to battle back the way he did to be as successful as he did the last couple of months or so. Yeah, I mean, Micah Ashman, he's a very interesting arm, like 31% strikeout rate between high A and double A, 5.6% walk rate. That's really good. Again, opponent batting average 159, FIP is 180, so clearly it's not a fluke. The 149 ERA between the 2 levels. And yeah, I mean, he's not going to be on the top 50. I mean, he's just like a left-handed reliever who's about to be 23, 6'7", rail thin. But like you said, he's going to not be needed to be added to a 40-man roster for a few years even. So you can keep him in the upper levels and just see what you can do with him. Yeah, I'll take that all day for Charlie Morton. It's also interesting that the Orioles made a later trade with the Tigers as well, sending cash for 34-year-old left-handed pitcher Enns. What's his first name? Enid Enns or something? I don't know. Emmett Enns? Dietrich Enns. There you go. But very interesting arm. This could be, he could be like the Albert Suarez of this year because he's got a 109 stuff plus, 110 pitching plus. At 34 years old, went over to the KBO and NPB the last few years, had great peripherals in AAA this year. So that could be interesting as well. But yeah, to get anything for Charlie Morton after the way the season started is a win, no matter what.
Yeah, I think I was only familiar with Enns because I think I tried to stream him earlier this year and fails. And then good thing I didn't because I think he got blown up in that outing. Welcome to Baltimore. But no, the Micah Ashman deal, it is what it is, right? Yeah, I'm not gonna have him in my top 50 either, but yeah, I agree. I don't see Charlie Morton being in the major leagues. I think he said as much that this is probably his last go. But yeah, all the credit in the world for him to turning it around. Hope he goes and can help the Tigers and has a good final 2, hopefully 3 months of the season over there in Detroit. But Ashman, it's like, see, he was on Joe Doyle's big board last year. See what Joe said about him. Yeah, kid out of Utah, low 90s fastball, but that was like the only pitch he had. He had a slurvy breaking ball option that he sparingly used. Looks like he's turned that into a better slider this year that he uses regularly. So fastball slider right now, but he was a reliever all throughout college. He's been a reliever as a pro so far. We know the Orioles don't particularly care what their role is. If they think they see a starter, they're going to try to stretch him out. But even if he's just a relief arm, I can see him. I still see him getting some bulk innings, especially down there in Delmarva. They try to work with him, see if they add a couple pitches to his tool belt or not. But it's a young lefty arm. You see what happens. No real strong opinions here, but it is what it is. It's another arm. Did we talk about Chandler Marsh from the Mets?
No, we really didn't cover
part of the
Marsh.
deal.
So yeah, if you got something to add, feel free.
I'm going through my list here and making sure. Now I lost it. Here you go, Chandler Marsh. He was the third piece of that Cedric Mullins deal. Oh, yeah, not undrafted free agent out of Georgia, up to 97, 18 inches of induced vertical break. He would spend some time in the Florida State League this year, so there was data on him. A 102 stuff plus fastball, 102 stuff plus slider. That was his most used pitch. Got a 47% whiff rate on the slider as well. Needs to throw more strikes, but he's having success so far in A-ball, and he's not Rule 5 eligible, so there you go.
Good stuff there. And we got a question actually before we even got on the air tonight from YouTube. It's from KB, and I want to bring it up here because I think it's a question that's on a lot of people's minds and one that we'll probably have a better answer to before next week, which is how are we going to fit the 15 new prospects plus 20 newly drafted guys on the rosters? Unfortunately, and an unfortunate part of the business is that players probably are going to get released. We've actually already seen it with Urias, Morton. It is worth pointing out that some, if not all, of the pitchers that the Orioles drafted in this year's class probably aren't going to pitch this summer. So that's not going to have an immediate effect, but certainly with the players that came over at the deadline, and particularly the position players that were drafted this year, we're going to see a lot of turnover on rosters. And the draft, I think you're going to see a lot of those guys get to Delmarva in the next few weeks. And looking into trades that the Orioles made, it seems like a lot of these prospects are going to slot into Aberdeen and Chesapeake initially. As we've touched on a little bit tonight, I could see a few of them getting to Norfolk before the season ends. But regardless, we're looking at some real shakeups here in the coming days.
Yeah, this is the part that's also like, it's not fun because the Orioles had to be sellers this year in a year that we expected a whole lot more out of this organization. But we're here. We're at this point. Nothing can be done now except look towards 2026 and make the most of each opportunity, which the Orioles have done with the draft and this deadline. But yeah, is now we get to, at this point, one of the downsides, other than seeing some guys like Cedric Mullins leave on the minor league side, we've probably watched some guys play their last games as professionals. Unfortunately, they're probably going to get released and not get another shot. Is Urias Morton going to sign with another team? Because other teams are also making trades and have draft picks and undrafted free agents. If you liked Urias Morton, you might have seen him play his last game as a professional here in the States, unfortunately. So that, yeah, there's also the development list. I know I was asking before we hopped on, how many guys can you put on the development list? Because you can also have pitchers who maybe they reach their innings limit. You hold off on some guys. And then as more of the guys in the lower level specifically reach their innings limit, you put them on the development list. You shut them down for the year. That opens up a spot. Unfortunately, there are a lot of injuries as well. Maybe some other injuries become a little bit more severe, quote unquote. Some phantom injuries pop up. Guys get put on the IL. You can maneuver it in ways to add a few more names into onto these rosters. But yeah, a lot of guys this is the end of the road for them.
Yeah, it's sad. The sagging middle, I think, is about to, between some guys filling it in and some guys being released from that area. Maybe a lot of the undrafted, on the pitcher front, the undrafted free agent signings the last couple of years could probably go. Maybe some of the more veteran guys, like, I don't know. I don't even want to call out by name just because it feels wrong. But yeah, you're going to definitely see some losses, guys that we've been rooting for a while. But yeah, like you said, it's part of the system now that they shrunk the minor league full season rosters. So just what it is.
I do want to go to one more question that just came in here from Addit. Is Dylan Beavers a post August 15 call up? Now that would be the deadline for where Beavers could still be Rookie of the Year eligible next season. And I know that his case for that extra draft pick is not as clear cut as it is with Samuel Basallo, because I don't know that he has appeared on enough or the right top 100 prospect list to get the Orioles a draft pick. So unless some things change in the offseason, I don't know that he'd even be eligible. But this does bring up a point that I think we're going to be talking about a lot next week, but I wanted to put it out there tonight too. Just get Dylan Beavers up to the major leagues. This deadline allows you to experiment with seeing who can contribute in 2026 in ways that you couldn't have if the Orioles had been buyers at the deadline. And, there's a lot of negative about this season. I'm not going to deny that. But one way to make the most of the last 2 months is to give guys like Beavers some runway to play and see what they can do, because then you can go in the offseason knowing, okay, Beavers doesn't look like he's quite ready. We need to bring in a couple more outfielders, or we think Beavers is good for at least 3 or 4 days a week in right field next year. We can go spend our money elsewhere. So what are your guys' thoughts on this?
Bring him up. Basallo makes way more sense to wait to that August 15th, post August 15th, maybe August 23rd, where we're going to have a patron suite night at the Camden Yards. But just because he's a top prospect, he has a very good chance to win Rookie of the Year next year, in my opinion. And you want to give yourself that opportunity. But like you said, Beavers, I don't think he's on any top 100 list right now. And he very well could be before the start of next season, just because of the season he's had. But why mess around with it? He might win Rookie of the Year next year. Great. I hope he does. But let's get him the time now. Let's get him seasoned in. And like you said, if he is one of the rare guys that just has success right away, doesn't have much of an adjustment period, then there you go. But if he does struggle, you could always send him back down, mess around that way to retain his Rookie of the Year / rookie eligibility if you really wanted to towards the end of the season. But bring him up tomorrow. Let's see him out in right field in Wrigley.
Baseball America got by the the fake tweet. Oh man, what a day. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. It was a very long day, but come on, guys. Anyway, bring him up, and we're an hour plus in already. It's almost 11 o'clock at night after a crazy week. But so I don't want to get into the promotion process of prospects here in the system, which we could do a whole nother hour on, I'm sure. But get him up to the major leagues, and for the love of God, just put him in the lineup and put him in the field, please. That as well. Clearly, what you have been doing with these kids is having an impact on them mentally, which it can be more damaging than anything physical. So get him in the lineup. What do you got to lose at this point in the year? Get him in the lineup, get him in the field. And if it's ugly a couple nights a week, so be it. Let him learn, let him take his lumps. Now, let's see what we got. But he's reaching that point of what else does he have left to prove at AAA. So
exactly. And with that, now we will go into our final segment of the night. Last call brought to you by Checker Spot Brewing, located 1421 Ridgely Street. Checker Spot is not far from Camden Yards, making it the perfect place for a pre or post game drink. And when you're at the ballpark this year, be sure to check out the beer stand behind home plate, where you can get one of Checker Spot's signature beers. The bird is a word. And now in our last call segment tonight, we're going to put ourselves on the spot to make a case for what we think the strongest trade of this deadline was. Now, it's up to you guys if you want to include Brian Baker as technically being a deadline deal or not. I'll let you make that subjective designation. But with what we've seen in the last few days, there are a lot of trades that you could presumably make a case for. And I'm interested to hear what you guys want to say is the strongest trade this deadline, at least from where we're sitting right now. And I will start with Bob.
Yeah. If the Baker trade counts, and I don't think it does, that would definitely be the winner, because you got a $4 million high school outfielder for a reliever who is crashing and burning since the trade. Yeah, so I'll go with I'm going to go with Andrew Kitridge to the Cubs in exchange for Wilfred De La Cruz because, like I said earlier, just that upside for an older, expensive reliever who has an option, yes, but was it even going to be picked up? And you get a guy who I personally have slotted into the bottom of my personal top 30, just immediate reaction and could adjust before Monday's big update. But I just love the upside play there. Yes, the O'Hearn Laureano deal was bigger and got the best prospect involved, but just for value, I think that was a fleece job by Mike Elias to get De La Cruz from the Cubs. So I'm going to go with that one.
I like that. I was thinking of that angle if everyone else had gone with some of the other deals. But yeah, it's easy to go the Padres route. And I do kind of want to go there. But I'm going to go ahead and say the Gregory Soto deal potentially. Because watching Wellington Aracena the other night was pretty special. I know that was a low A outing. He has a very long way to go in his development, obviously. But let me pull up what he did. I lost it real quick. Wellington, where did you go? What did you do? So in his debut for Delmarva, 4 2/3 innings, no earned runs, 1 hit, 1 walk, 6 strikeouts, up to 97 with 6 ground ball outs, a lot of strikes. Boston Bateman's a lot of fun and a lot to dream on, but initially, until I dive in a little bit more, just initial takeaway here, 24 hours into this thing, not even. Is it crazy to say Wellington Aracena could have the highest ceiling of any pitcher brought back at the deadline? I think there's an argument for that. So that's why I'll go with the Soto trade.
I like that.
I was going to go with the Kitridge trade. I think Bob pretty much summed up all the points that I was going to make. The only thing I would add on to it is that, and Nick brought this up earlier too, bringing De La Cruz into the system really allows you to think about how you want to handle your lower level prospects going forward. And it might make the Orioles more willing to part with one of those players if they need to get a starting pitcher this offseason, because they brought in De La Cruz, who was just signed in January, now probably a back-end top 30-ish prospect in the system. I thought that was a great move, and I think it's the kind of move that a team like the Orioles should be making, where you move a guy that's not going to be part of your long-term plans but is under a reasonable contract. You get a good prospect back in return for him, and you really not just raise the depth of your system, but I would say raise the ceiling of it too. But since Bob went with that and Nick went with the Soto trade, I'll just go ahead and I'll go with the Padres deal, because in Neighbors, I think you've got a guy back who could be contributing to this team by sometime in the first half of 2026. And if we wanted to get really aggressive with him, stick him in Norfolk now. I would even say to do that, even if you just plan to leave him there for the rest of the year. But stick him in Norfolk now. I don't think there's much left for him to prove in Double-A. And if he dominates for the next month, I can't rule out a September call-up. And you don't want to base these trades just on what happens in the next few weeks or months. But Neighbors is a guy that could be part of your bullpen for the next few years and could be could have a fairly immediate impact. But then in Bateman, there's a real argument to be made, certainly among left-handers, that he has one of the highest, if not the highest ceiling for a starting pitcher in this system. It's the kind of prospect that the Orioles didn't have. He's pitching well this year in a hitter-friendly environment. I think that if he goes to Aberdeen for the last month or so of this season, you're probably going to see him make some pretty good adjustments, and we could be talking about a guy that's pitching at Double-A next year as a 20-year-old. And you round it out this trade with Smith, Hightower, Butterworth, and Figueroa. I think Hightower is the highest ceiling guy in that group, but Butterworth and Smith have interesting trades on their own. And Figueroa, if you can figure out the hit tool, improve the defense at first base a little bit, maybe you have something, maybe you don't. But if nothing else, we know that having guys like this in the system is going to make your lineups a lot better. We've seen that wherever T.T. Bowens has been. in his career. Just having a good middle of the order bat in the higher levels in the minor leagues, even if it's not a true prospect, is never a bad thing. So I really like this move.
One quick hot take, because it's 11 p.m. and I'm a beer deep. Why not? At the end of next year, Cobb Hightower is flirting with top 20 in this organization. I just that's my gut feeling. And also, how are the San Diego Padres playing any minor league games at this point with all their trades? And then I'm looking, they released like their entire DSL rosters even. Oh, okay. How fun, San Diego.
It's just some grand AJ Preller experiment. Like, all right, hold my beer. This is really how I'm going to show you that I've gone off the rails and trying to get a World Series here.
You know what? I've always said I love watching it from afar. And I don't know if I want my team's GM to be as psycho as AJ Preller, but honestly, I don't know if I'd say being a Padres fan is fun, but it has got to be quite the roller coaster to be a Padres fan. I'll give him that. He's pushing the chips in because he knows his job is on the line.
Yeah, I like guys like him and Jerry DiPerto on other teams. We can enjoy their madness from afar. But it's funny, the Red Sox, which they made the worst trade of the day, in my opinion, sending Gibbs, the guy they traded. It's late. What the heck?
Gibbs, yeah, from the Devers trade.
Yeah, that was the headliner in the Devers trade. They traded him plus others to the Dodgers for 2 months of Dustin May when they're not even a guarantee to make the playoffs. Like, that's crazy to me. And then you got Craig Breslow out there saying, man, we were so aggressive. Other teams are like, hey, that's enough. Slow down. AJ Preller's just like, whatever. It's just another July.
San Diego, man. San Diego changed you. I will say that when you're out there for the good. But we'll see how it all plays out.
And that does it for this show. Thank you for joining us for this special episode as we recap the trade deadline. We're going to be back on Monday with one of our favorite shows of the year, and that is the midseason update to our top 50 prospects list. And we're going to have a lot of ground to cover between the trade deadline and the draft just in the last few weeks. So you're not going to want to miss that. In the meantime, you can check us out on our many social media channels, including Facebook, Instagram, Threads, X, Blue Sky, Twitch, YouTube, and TikTok. We're also over at Substack, OrielsOnTheVerge.substack.com. And while you're browsing around the internet, be sure to head over to Patreon and sign up to become a member today. You can join to $3, $5, or $10 levels. I have bonus weekly coverage from Bob, Nick, and myself, as well as monthly updates to our top 50 prospects list. You're not going to want to miss that. For Bob Phil and Nick Stevens, this is Zach Spen. You've been listening to Orioles on the Verge, part of the Believe Podcast Network.